Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
I had a lot of fun yesterday. I don't know, my Facebook page is like just packed with pictures right now. So I knew about this wedding like 3 weeks ago. A friend of mine in Connecticut, he was like, Bob, we want to surprise everyone. We're inviting them over for a Jack and Jill reception. We're going to have like door prizes and stuff. But really, we want to do a wedding. Would you do the wedding for me? I was like, yes. That is something that I love. And I love weddings. So I've done hundreds of them. I love doing them. So I was like, absolutely, I'll do it. He's like, okay, but you can't tell anyone. So that's pretty easy because I'm like almost 3 hours away from where it's happening. Nobody's asking me any questions. So we show up yesterday and we talked for about 5 minutes. I was like, when do you want to do it? He goes, let's do it in 5 minutes. I was like, awesome. So he does the whole thing, and literally they had told like one other person, a photographer, and that was it. No, the mothers didn't know, the dads didn't know. Nobody knew that this wedding was going to happen. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. It was funny. So I had a blast. And when you do weddings like that, you actually find out how long weddings have to be, which is about 3 minutes. So like for the rest of your life, once you've done one of these, it's like every wedding you go to, you think, well, this could have been over a long time ago. But somebody needed a poem, and somebody needed to read, and somebody had a cousin who had to sing. But anyways, no. I'm only kidding. Weddings are celebrations. You celebrate as long as you want them to be, but the technical stuff is actually pretty short. So had a blast. I love weddings, love, and it was fun. The whole trip back, it was awesome. Yeah. So if you want to get married or get married again, just call me. I'll do it last minute. I'll come to your picnic. Do it right away. It's not a problem. All right, we're going to take a look at Luke chapter 11. Luke 11, famous chapter. Why? Because it starts out with the Lord's Prayer. Bless God. I could probably start it. You guys would finish it, but I'm not gonna. Because we're actually going to take a look at the parable that takes place right after that. And I'm going to give you some of the fill-in and talk to you a little bit about the culture and stuff of what was happening when Jesus spoke, because I just think it's so important. And I've really, I think this is the third time I've preached and preached on parables, and I'm getting really fired up about them. And someday I just may do the life of Christ through the parables, because man, there's just so much in them. So anyways, just so you know, if you hear me randomly in the sanctuary talking, it's probably just me practicing, because this stuff is awesome. Someday I want to do a whole epic deal, because God's pretty epic. All right, Jesus says to them, whoa, move your microphone and blow people away. Okay. Sorry. Sound guy's like, oh no! I had a guy once, a preacher who he didn't like the fact that the sound guy always listened on headphones, because he thought, I don't know why, he just had it in his head that sound guys should listen to the live. So he purposely spoke really, really soft for about the first 5 minutes of his message, and then he shouted in the microphone and made the poor guy almost go deaf in the back. It was pretty funny. Okay, it wasn't funny. It's funny to us preachers, because that's just funny. I'll move on. Chapter 11, verse 5. Jesus said to them, suppose you have a friend, or I think this is the NIV that I copied. Some of you might have to say, which one of you? And just so you know, that phrase is the one that kind of captures everybody. Like it invites everybody into the sermon. It's kind of into the illustration. It's kind of like when I say, all of us have, or I'll say, everybody in the room, everybody here at this church, or I might say, well, nobody at this church has this problem, but everybody else does, that sort of thing. It's kind of an all-encompassing invitation to, hey, I'm going to give you just a little something to think about. So come on in. And so they would, because Jesus just had an amazing reputation of a storyteller that people loved to be around. They loved it. And his reputation as a rabbi was literally renowned. Everyone in the country knew about Jesus. He wasn't the only rabbi everybody knew about, but he was one of the teachers that everybody liked to go see and listen to. And his disciples were people that they wanted to hang out with because they would help explain what the teacher just spoke about. And they would spend, obviously, days doing this sometimes out in the wilderness. Just amazing stuff. Sorry. On with the verse. Suppose one of you has a friend, and you go to them at midnight and say, "Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine is on a journey and has come to me, and I have no food to offer him." And, okay, just a thing. When it comes to communication, the way you perceive somebody really impacts the way that you speak to that person. I know that's not earth-shattering news, but I will draw it back in. So if the person you're going to talk to is somebody that is like funny and friendly, it impacts the way that you talk to them. If it's somebody who is a gossip, it impacts what you say to them. If it's somebody who plays politics, like you may be very select in the information you give them, or you may be playing politics yourself, and so you're going to give them the information needed so that they appreciate you, so that you can layer yourself up, so you can climb the ladder, blah, blah, blah. If the person is angry, yeah, definitely adjusts the way you might present something. If the person is loving and kind, right? Way easier to talk to. And sometimes the angry person and loving, kind person might be the same person at different times of the day. So I've heard about that anyways. I don't personally know about how, but I've heard that sometimes is, so you have to, you make an adjustment. If you know the person's a good listener, like you can feel it inside of you. It's like, oh, I need to talk to somebody. Who's the person I call? And you call that person because it's like, wow, that person's a good listener. They're going to spend some time hearing what I have to say. Same thing with the concept of being safe. There's people that I know that call me or talk to me because I'm a safe person to talk to. That's something I take very seriously. Often, there are other pastors, and they're working something out. And it's tough. I can honestly say not here, because there's just such a different atmosphere here. There's so much grace in this house. It's amazing. And I know that as pastors have the freedom to discuss things amongst each other that we're just even working on, or concepts we're just kicking around. It's really amazing. But not a lot of churches have that. And pastors actually have to be really careful about what they might be considering, because it could literally impact their lives. So they need safe people to talk to that they can bounce stuff off of and see if it's even reasonable. And I know I'm that for a couple people, and it's a privilege to be in that role. And a safe person, it impacts what you say and how you can say it. If the person that you're communicating to is yourself, it's also important. How you perceive yourself impacts the way you talk to yourself. Your self-talk is really powerful. I've told you before, I spent so much of my life believing I was stupid. Now, there was plenty of evidence that said I was smart, but I didn't, because I was coming at it from that filter, I always found evidence to prove my presupposition, which was I was stupid. I spent years doing this. I got really good at finding stupid things every day. Every day. And what would I say? Oh, you are such an idiot. I must have said that dozens of times a day. Sometimes it's because I was an idiot, but sometimes I was just being funny. But I perpetuated that self-talk over and over and over again because I perceived myself to be stupid. And so that was always there. If you perceive yourself to be a sinner, right? Now you're constantly what? Looking for evidence that I'm a sinner, 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 I'm a sinner. If you perceived yourself to be loved, then you find love all around you. You find little evidences of it all around you. It's awesome. If you find yourself, if you perceive yourself to be a slave, then you're always finding things that the master's telling you to do, and if you don't do, he's not going to be happy with you. If you perceive yourself to be a son or a daughter, then you find opportunities to join your Father because he's good and loving and kind, and you want to jump in on what he's doing, and you know he's going to be happy about the fact that you showed up. I mean, it's awesome to be around a father that likes having you around. Now, my dad's been gone for a long time, but I had an amazing privilege of working with him for years. I started, I think, when I was 7 or 8 years old. He painted lines in parking lots. It was hard work. But looking back, man, what an amazing opportunity I had to get to know my dad. And my dad, the way I remembered anyways, always appreciated the work I did. Sometimes he had to instruct me more. And occasionally I had to do it again and again. But somewhere in there, I always felt appreciated by that I went to, that I was able to go to work with him. And I got really good at sweeping lines. Really, really good at it. Oh, man. Why did you go through all that, Bob? Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. The verse? You think I should? Oh, because so, yeah, of course it ties in to the verse because you have the notes right there. So, Jesus is telling this story. Suppose you have a friend. You go to him at midnight and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. And a friend of mine is on a journey, has come, and I have no food to offer him. And suppose the one inside answers, don't bother me. The door is already locked. My children are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything. Now, what's that note? Oh, yeah, okay. Now, this story, I just want to kind of go backwards on this a little bit. So, the man is at the door of a friend asking for bread because the man had a friend show up at his door at midnight and needed a place to stay. Now, in this culture, in our culture today, this would seem very strange for a lot of us, that somebody would feel comfortable coming to our house in the middle of the night, expecting a place to stay and a meal for him and his family. We would say something like, what? Like what other things in your life have fallen apart that is there no hotel in the entire planet that has room right now? Is there no restaurant that was open on your way here? Could you not have spent the night somewhere else and showed up here maybe in the morning? Or maybe you could have called ahead. I mean, there's lots of, in our culture today, and I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying hospitality is not something that we continue to perpetuate, generally speaking. I'm not saying, you all are wonderful, but there are people at other churches that are not quite as hospitable as you all. I'd feel comfortable coming to your houses anytime, and you can come to mine. But culturally speaking, in the world that Jesus is speaking, so when he's starting to tell this story, this immediately becomes like a cartoon to people. It is so outside their realm. They're like, this is ridiculous. Jesus is being funny again. I love these stories. Because culturally speaking, hospitality was such a big deal. You were taught to be hospitable. As a child, you were given opportunities to be hospitable. They would make up opportunities for you to learn how to be hospitable, how to take in somebody. I've seen these, okay? There are rabbinical teachings where like in essence in Sunday school, you would teach someone how to be a good borrower, how to go to someone's house and borrow something well. And usually it involved having a conversation with them. Literally, the training was go to their house, knock on their door, ask them how their children are, ask them how they're feeling, ask them where their husband is and what he's doing, how he's doing, and then ask them for the pot that you need in order to, that you need to borrow, or the food that you need in order to make your meal. They're like, you borrow from a place of relationship. And then you got to be a good lender. And you lend from a place of relationship. So when you handed something over, you did the same thing. You're like, well, let me ask you, how is your life? How is your husband? How are your children? What's it like at your house? And here's the pot. Have a nice day. It'd take you 2 hours to get a pot. But that was the concept. The concept was you were there for each other. And it wasn't just for neighbors. It was for entire villages. You wanted your village to be known as a hospitable place. So if you saw strangers coming into the town, you watched where they went. And then you might bring something to that house so that you would know that they were well cared for. So you might show up with a casserole of leeks and onions. And just say, well, I saw you had some company. I thought maybe you might want something. Here's some bread I made a couple extra loaves or patties or whatever, pitas. Whew. Right term, Bob. Come up with the right term. The flatbread. I made some bread. Have some bread. It was just culturally something the village would want. And if you were unable to, then you would find a way. Because you knew everybody was on your side. You could go to anyone and ask them a question. So it's into this culture that a man shows up at midnight at a friend's house and expects to be taken in and expects a meal. So you can picture what's going on at his house. It can't be midnight in both parts of the story. So let's say it's 11. And earlier that night at dinner, the family had been sitting around. It was such a good meal. Oh man, the wife and the daughters just made this amazing meal, and it had this gravy that was so good. And there was just you just kind of kept grabbing the pitas and dipping it in and eating it, and by the end of the meal there were no pitas left. And man, it was so good. And you're laid back on the pillows, and the wife's being complimented, and she's passing on the compliments to the children that helped her, or the servants that helped her, and everybody's exhausted. The dopamines in your brain are flowing, whatever. Boom. Everybody goes to bed. And then, at 11 o'clock, you hear the pounding. Oh, ow. Jeez, that's a really hard pulpit. So you hear some banging on the door. And the guy wakes up, and it's a friend. It's not even a relative. It's a friend. He goes to the door. He's like, oh, how are you? Come on in, Demetrius. And bring the whole family. And everybody's coming in, and what's he doing? He's waking up the rest of the family. Hey, get up. We have company. Wake up. All the kids are sleeping in one room. They're all like, whoa. Honestly, though, it is a little fun to wake up a kid in the middle of the night. Right? They're just like a little drunk. Like, you ever try to dress them? It's like dressing somebody with no bones. Like, they're just like... They're hilarious. You're just like, no, give me your arm. No, give me the other arm. Will you give me the other? Thank you. Get up. I am up. Go to the car. What? We're leaving for Florida. Okay, maybe that was my personal life. I remember my dad insisted on leaving for Florida at 2 a.m. It was a 24-hour trip. We drove straight through, got to the hotel at 2 p.m. or what, I don't know. I don't even know. I just remember occasionally we'd stop at a thing called Stuckey's, and I desperately wanted a pecan roll because it's basically a sugar stick, and it would just explode me with energy in the back seat, much to my parents' joy. Much to their joy. Yes, I was. All right, so anyway, so he's waiting, sorry. And on back to the story. Okay, so he's waking up the family. The wife gets up. They're like, oh, my friends are here. They're waiting for us. And they're going to sleep in this room. So kids, you're all sleeping in this room. Get your stuff, move over, and then go to the kitchen and start making some food. And he's got everybody down. And the wife's like, honey. What? We don't have any bread. You ate it all. Remember the gravy? Oh, it was so good. Yeah, well, we don't have any bread. Okay, well, we got figs, right? Yeah. Okay, I do love figs. I know. I can get them figs, and I can get them some other things. I don't even know, called leeks and bagels. I don't know. Salmon. I don't know. I'll get them all that, but we don't have any bread. Can you get us some bread? Absolutely, I can get bread. I'll go right next door. I know he has extra bread. Now remember, this is like normal stuff. This is easy. Go to a neighbor at midnight and ask for bread. No big deal. He goes next door, knocks on the door. Hey, I have a friend who just showed up at my house. I don't have any bread. Can you loan me some bread? Now, those reasons this guy gives are ridiculous reasons. You know, it's kind of like somebody calling you at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and saying, hey, let's go out for dinner. And you're like, well, I just put on my pajamas. I took off my bonnet. Joni got it. Thank you, Joni. Appreciate your support over there, sweetie. You know, the TV's on. Like there's no, it's not hard to like put on a pair of yoga pants or jeans or shut the TV off and go. Like it's easy. It's easy to change it, but you're like, oh, I just poured the wine. Whatever. So these excuses are ridiculous excuses for not giving the guy some bread. You literally could have flung these things out of the window like a Frisbee and called it a day. And culturally, this was expected. This was expected. So the guy gives them the reasons. I can't, all my kids are sleeping. So, in the culture of that day, you would have, he would have woke the children up and said, listen, we have an opportunity to be hospitable to our neighbor. I need you to get the bread. I want you to bring the bread over, and let's get a few more other things and bring that over as well so that his guests can have a wonderful meal. And the children would have been like, really? He would have said, yes, this is an opportunity. We can give more than what's expected. We can be hospitable to our neighbor and to his friends. As a village, our reputation will continue to grow as a place where people want to be and a group of people that other people want to be a part of and will move into. And our village will expand. Yes, get out of bed and bring the bread to our neighbor. None of that happened in this story. People that are listening to this story are laughing. They're like giggling off to the side, like, oh my gosh, can you imagine this happening? This would have been, no way. Oh, my father would have freaked out. Oh my word. I don't know what I'd do. So it's expected that the guy would continue to knock on the door. Hey, I need bread. I got friends who need bread. I need bread. You have bread. I need bread. Loan me the bread. Please give me the bread. I need the bread. Now, at this point, I bring you back to the part of the timeline. It's midnight. Have you ever been in a small village at midnight when everybody's sleeping? Yeah, me either. But I imagine it's a lot like a campground. Have you ever heard someone in a campground at midnight? Yeah, it's like they're in your camper. Am I right? They could be 12 campsites away, and you hear them talking around the fire, and you're thinking, who's outside my camper? And why are they talking so loud? So I make that point to say this. I'm guessing a lot of people in the village are currently aware of the fact that one neighbor is not being hospitable to someone else. This is getting around. And his children are awake at this point. And he continues to ask his neighbor for bread because why wouldn't he? And eventually, it says that the neighbor gave in. He says, I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, because of your shameless audacity. Now, I don't know, I should have wrote down the other words that are used there, but basically that doesn't mean that the guy's trying to avoid shame. It's the idea that he will do whatever it takes to get it done. He says, so he will surely get up and give you as much bread as you need, which goes back to the point that this guy had the bread to give him. This is not an issue of provision. This is an issue of the heart. So, Jesus tells this whole story. And people are sitting there, and they're listening to this whole story. And they are shocked and amazed at the behavior of this neighbor. The crazy concept that somebody wouldn't be this hospitable was just blowing them away. And Jesus gets done with the story, and he says, so I say to you, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened unto you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks the door will be open. Which of you fathers, if your son asks for a fish and he gives them a snake instead, or which of you asks for an egg and he gives you a scorpion? If then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? He's like, you need to understand who I am. Like, remember that Jesus came here to his main, one of his main points was to expose people to who God the Father was, but he's also exposing them to who he is because he's God. So this is a passionate place for Jesus because he knows that his Father has been treated like the neighbor who won't give away any bread that he has. He knows that his Father has been treated like some ogre who you have to beg and bang on the door and plead and make noise and embarrass him and eventually manipulate him to finally give you what it is that you're looking for. Because you know he has it. And he's like, that isn't my dad. It's not who I am. If you ask, he gives it. If you knock, he'll open it. And people are sitting back going, oh, yeah. That's who we pray to. We pray to a God who's very hospitable, who literally has, 24-hour service, whose doors are always open, who's never surprised by our arrival, never put out by your request, doesn't have to go looking around like, oh, man, let's see. Well, I don't have any bread, but I got some flour. He's just changing the concept of how people perceive God because they often perceive him as angry, wrath-filled, or at least bipolar. And you're not quite sure if you don't make him happy, what might snap and he's just going to kill somebody or wipe out a nation. And whenever I hear now, and I listen, there are wonderful preachers who love Jesus. I'm not taking that away. But when When I hear them describe God as being filled with wrath, I have to ask, why do you need him to be so angry? Why do you need him to be so hard to get to? Why? And it's not a mocking thing. I'm really curious. Like, where does that come from? Most of the time, I think it just comes from tradition. It's what they were taught. It's what they went to school, what they were taught in church. It was what they were taught in seminary. It's the way they learned to preach. I don't think half the time, they've even stepped back to say, oh yeah, it does kind of make them sound mean, doesn't it? It's just what they know. And so I think it's important for preachers to ask that. And it's like, well, no, that's not what the message is about, Bob. I know. Sorry, I almost went down a rabbit trail. Jesus is saying, listen, guys, my Father is an amazing Father. I am an amazing God. We listen to you. We hear you. You are heard. You are loved. We are kind. We are gentle. Your voice matters. So you don't have to pound. You don't have to. Now, I know some people actually feel, at some level, they have a level of comfort banging on the door. It's maybe the way they grew up. And that's fine. I don't think God gets angry at you because you keep, banging on the door. It's just like he just brings the bread. It's like you can pound. It's fine. He's not. He's a gentle, amazing, loving Father. All right. Wow, that was quick. Well, that's because you're not done yet. Oh yeah, that's right. We're going on to Luke 18. Because there's kind of a secondary parable, kind of goes along with the same concepts. Luke 18, verse 1. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with a plea, grant me justice against my adversary. Now, once again, Jesus is being funny. And I know I bring up this cultural stuff, but I bring it up on purpose. I bring it up because if we don't, then we get stuck on just breaking down the Word of God. And it's not a bad thing to break down the Word, but we miss the nuances and the beauty of the culture and the people that Jesus was talking to. You would never, this is, when people heard this sentence, there was a judge who didn't fear God or man. In their head, they thought, how in the world did he get to be a judge? What village would have made him a judge? This is ridiculous. How did he get a job? Because you wouldn't put a judge who didn't fear at least one or the other. So this man was completely self-absorbed. He only moved based on what he wanted. And this is who the widow comes to. Now I get to make up the story about the widow because it's not there. So you get to make up the story. If you don't like my story, make up your own. So she wants justice. You need to hear my plea. So I picture her the first day. The judge goes to wherever the judge goes, probably somewhere around the city gates. It probably was an open forum of some sort. And he went and he did his job. And people would bring him all kinds of stuff. And she's waiting in line. But she's a widow. She literally has no status whatsoever for the judge to pay attention to. He doesn't have to step in on her behalf at all. She's a widow. It's an unfortunate cultural reality. And she has no financial benefit for him to intervene on. She has nothing to offer him financially. She has nothing to offer him politically. She has nothing to offer him culturally. So he sees her. Now, I picture her to be like stunning, just beautiful. I'm going to put her in her late 20s. I picture her getting married sometime, between 14 or 15 years old to an older gentleman who absolutely adored her. I think she was, like I said, just beautiful on every level, intelligent. kind. And then in his desire to make sure she was taken care of, he wrote something down and gave it to her. And I think it probably was maybe a deed to the property so that she could continue to receive funding for the rest of her life if he ever died. Now, I'm just making that up. It's not in the Bible. Please don't quote me. Well, you can if you like the story, but just make sure they know that it's the story. It's not, I'm just making it up. So I picture her, that her husband dies, and she fully expects to be cared for because of what he set up. But just because it's my story, ruthless men from the town, they wanted that property their whole lives. They watched that property. They knew he was getting sick. They said, well, I'm taking that property. That property's mine. We're gonna raise lambs on that property. And there's nothing that old widow can do about it. So he dies, and they just move in on her property. And she goes to them, and she's like, "You can't do this. I have a paper here. My husband gave me that property. You have to pay rent if you're going to use that property. I need to be taken care of." He wanted to make sure I would never have any wants the rest of my life. And they were like, "You're a widow. Shut up. You're a woman. Who's going to believe you? The property's ours because we say so. We're men." I know, it's another whole issue, Bob. Leave it alone. So she goes to the judge. And I picture her out there the first day, and she looks great, and she's standing there in line. Nobody paid her any mind. Judge is sitting there all day. He sees her out there all day, doesn't even pay her any attention. The line dwindles down. He's got no one else left. He's like, "Anybody else left?" They're like, "The widow." He's like, "Anyone else left?" "The widow." "Anyone else?" "All right, I'm done." He leaves. And the next day she comes back. And the next day she comes back. And she's starting to get, shall we say, intense. The intensity's starting to rise. And after a little while, she's realizing, listen, if I don't get his attention, this isn't going to happen. So she starts to yell at him. "Hey, you need to pay attention to me. I have something that needs to be taken care of." And he just keeps on walking right by her. And she starts yelling even louder. "I need you to be an advocate for me." And he just ignores her. And his friends are laughing. They're like, "Hey, the widow's back." "Yeah, I know. Yesterday, man, I thought she's going to lose her mind. She's screaming about, oh, my husband left me this paper, and people, I don't care. She's a widow." Men can be such jerks, I'll tell you. I mean, back then. I mean, not here, not in this church. Just saying. So this selfish, arrogant, unavailable, unfair judge keeps coming into work and keeps seeing this widow. And she's getting more and more animated. And it says, for some time he refused. Finally, he said to himself, "Even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet this widow keeps bothering me. I'll see that she gets justice so she won't eventually come and attack me." And the word there in the Hebrew actually means give me a black eye. Like, she's so animated at this point, he physically thinks he'll be injured if he continues to refuse to give her some attention. And that would be embarrassing for him. So he's going to take care of her. So that tells me he probably was a wimpy judge. I don't know what that means in Jewish culture. I just think he probably thought she could take me. I've met a few girls like that in my life. I don't want to mess with them. Nope, just give them what they want. Give them what they want, keep moving. And they don't have to be brutal. No. My mom's a sweet, sweet lady. There was a few times in my life where I thought, oh, that person's going to die. If my mother gets that mad, somebody's going to die. So I hope that my mom doesn't listen. No, my mom, honestly, is awesome. But I'm just saying, the widow got to that place where there was such an intensity in her personality that the judge was like, I could end up physically injured if I don't do something, because she will not stop. So he advocated on her behalf. And this is what the scripture says. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? So this is what a couple things I want you to see. One, well, no, forget that. That takes too long to explain. So let me go with this then. Remember that in the Jewish culture, he's speaking to a Jewish culture that prays the same prayers over and over again, right? I've been at Jewish ceremonies. I've been at Jewish meals. They have booklets. They read the same prayers over and over again. This is not about anti-repeating prayer. This is not a thing that says you should never repeat the Lord's Prayer more than once a week because there's just no need for it. No, this is about who you're praying to. This is about who you think you're praying to. What's the persona that you put on God when you speak to him? And a lot of people, back in Jesus' day, again, nobody here would do this, but a lot of people back in Jesus' day, okay, maybe one or two people here, would put on him that he's unavailable to hear their cry, like the judge. That he's not going to listen to their plea. That they're going to have to get aggressive and just hope that eventually he comes around. They treat him like he's unavailable, like they don't have enough to offer him. Like they don't have enough money to offer him, they don't have enough time, they don't have enough talent, they don't have enough social status, they don't have enough spiritual status, they don't have enough places to, whatever it is, they put on themselves, they put on God this perception that he's unavailable for them and he's not going to listen to them anyway. And their only hope is to just keep banging their head against the wall and maybe someday he'll come through for them. And Jesus is saying, no, listen, that's not the way God is. You treat him like that, but that's not who he is. He will listen to you. He'll step forth on your behalf. He'll bring forth justice. And listen, I do know that sometimes you're in circumstances and you say to yourself, why hasn't God come through yet? I keep begging him. I know. I don't have a quick answer for that. I just know it's a reality for a lot of people. But internally, don't flip that onto God and make him unjust. Make him wrath-filled. Make him angry. Make him unobtainable. Make him somebody who doesn't think your voice is worthy to be listened to. Because that's not who he is. And that's what Jesus is trying to illustrate in both these parables. He just wants you to say, listen, remember who you're talking to. He's a loving Father who loves you and wants the best for you. And he will come through on your behalf. He will. And sometimes that's what you have to walk away and say, yeah. I know what I'm seeing doesn't look like he's doing what he said he'd do, but he will. And if all you do is repeat the same prayer over and over again, that's okay. Just as long as who you're repeating it to is the loving, kind, amazing, just-filled, gentle, good Father in heaven, because that's who Jesus came to present. And he's like, this is who I am. This is who I am. I sit and I listen. I listen to myself read these passages and tell these stories, and I think, how amazing the bandwidth of emotions Jesus must have been feeling when he's describing his Father and himself to a bunch of wonderful people that he desperately adores who just don't get it. And he uses humor and he uses short stories and he invites them in to just say, let's evaluate the way we're looking at this. And that's what I would invite you to do. If you're sitting there and any of those negative perceptions of God are part of who you are, just start pushing them away. And don't do so out of guilt. Do so out of humor. Because that's what Jesus did here. He was like, let's just laugh at some of the things that we put on my dad. Let's just laugh at some of the things you put on me. I'm easy to get to. My door's open. My provision is always. My justice is quick. My availability is 24/7. Don't try and put other things on me. Because I think you're awesome. And I will be there for you. And actually, that's probably, sometimes I say I will be there for you, and in our head, it sounds like he's going to show up when we ask, but actually, he is there for us, right? He just is, and he's there. And even if you don't believe it, it doesn't make him leave. Surprise. I'm here. God's so good. Yeah, now I'm done. Hope you guys have a fabulous day today.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.